Welcome everybody. We're getting final setup done here for our team robot call. Please mute yourself unless you are speaking, and I'll let Dee give you instructions. I'll be monitoring the chat questions today, so if you do have a question, you can go ahead and type it in there. Otherwise, follow Dee's instructions.
Okay guys, so I'm Dee Karabowicz, head referee for the state of Illinois. You've probably either heard my voice on other calls or whatnot. I'm your kind of go-to person when you guys have questions about the rules, and more specifically how we'll be interpreting things in Illinois. We've made a lot of efforts over the last 8 or so years to really unify how we all interpret the rules to get us all on the same page, but it's been a hard effort, and sometimes we still have certain leniencies that are state-based. So this is kind of going to be an open forum. I did want to get a couple things out of the way first. I'm not going to go through any of the missions, but I really wanted to talk about home and launch this year, and then interruptions. And then we'll kind of open it up for anyone to have questions.
So I'm happy to tackle the one about the robot dance, and the answer to that is depends on what you mean by the end of the run. It doesn't have to be done it's the last thing the robot is doing, but it doesn't have to be at the 2.5 minute mark. So if you're done with your run at say 1:45, as long as the robot dance is the last thing that you're doing, then it will count.
Okay, thank you. That clarifies it for us. And then I just added to the question about the pull-up bar. So we were unclear on, is there like does that need to happen at any particular sequence, or can that happen at any time when you?
And Dee is back on, so I'm going to let my boss take over.
I am. So the end of game pull-up bar, the second bullet point, I think it is, has to be done at the end of that match. If you're just talking about passing through, so your robot going through the pull-up bar like this, it can be done at any point during the match. If you're referring to hanging on the pull-up bar at the end of the match, it's at the end of the 2.5 minutes. It must be supported off the mat by the pull-up bar.
Okay, so then, sorry, because I feel like that both the dance and the pull-up bar have to have. So you can only do one then?
Yeah, you can only do one. And so if you have the rules in front of you, there's some blue text at the bottom.
Okay.
And it says that you can't do M06 or M07 and M08 at the same time. So you can't have the end game for pull-up bar and the end game of dancing on the dance square at the same time.
Okay, great. Thank you. Sorry, we might have missed that. And
no worries.
Yeah.
No worries. So the blue text is a new addition compared to the previous years. And the blue text is really nice because it does actually count towards the scoring, and it gives you exceptions, allowances, and restrictions. Let me find a page that I haven't written all over. As we look at the robot game guide, M01 is a good example. So if you look at M01, you have this text here, which has no impact on how referees will score this mission. So we don't even read this text. Instead, we read how to score it, which is this, and then the blue text, which is also used. And that's actually described here, that the basic description of each mission, this part's not used for the scoring. This is the requirement, so the bullet points are how we decide if something's been performed or completed correctly. And then added requirements, leniency, and other helpful facts are in blue.
Okay, yeah, thank you. That helps. I'm gonna pay more attention to those. Thank you.
No worries. And I do want to say, like, the blue text is helpful. It's also helpful to know that we don't read the non-bulleted text next to the model picture. Like, we don't even, to be honest, I don't think I've read all of them. I read the requirements, so the bullets and the blue text, nothing else.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Dee, this is Jim. You said it had to be hanging at the end of the 2.5 minutes. It's actually they can stop their match earlier, so I just want to clarify.
They can. Yes, that is true. So if your robot is hanging, you have no more missions to run. You can just make it clear in the video that you'll be submitting that, like, our match is over, we're going to turn off the robot. You don't have to let it hang there for an additional 1.5 minutes. Hey, Sarah, did you repin the video so it's up for everyone?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Okay. Were there any other questions that I should know about, or can I just launch into home and launch?
I think we should launch into home and launch.
Okay. So if you've never done First Lego League Challenge before, awesome. If you've done it before, you'll have noticed that there are differences in how home and launch are defined this year compared to previous years. So the spacing for launch is still defined the same way. It's the edge of the black line, the interior border of the south wall, and the exterior edge of the quarter circle. This year, home is defined as the whole area off the mat and the launch area. So this is really important when your robot is returning back to home after running a mission or a set of missions out on the field. In previous years, your robot would launch from launch and then would have to be all the way back into this area off the mat at the end of that excursion out from the launch area. This year, the robot can come back into here and be counted as inside of the home area. So really the big change is that home is just more inclusive. This is nice for teams that have bigger attachments when they're coming back, or even saving that extra 2 seconds it takes to get further into the area. This also allows teams to set up in the launch area while the robot is out running missions. Technically in the rules that wasn't allowed last year. This year, teams can interact in the home area, and since home area includes this, they can be setting up for the next run that the robot will be doing and kind of queuing things up to switch out attachments. Any questions about home and launch? The other really cool thing is that launch is infinity tall this year. So I mean, don't abuse it. Don't have, you know, a 4-foot thing that comes out and slams onto the table and breaks stuff. At least it's your table, but it's nice that the height limit is gone this year, but it's been threatened that it will come back if we're not, if we're a little too lax with it. Okay, so let's talk about exceptions for when the robot doesn't move all the way back into home on its return. So robot runs out, does stuff, and is coming back into the home area and doesn't quite make it in. So in this case, part of my robot is inside of the launch area, inside of the home area, and part of it's still outside. If the program has stopped, or if the team interacts with the robot, so if they touch it, the team can bring their robot back into the home area, but they will lose a precision token. Precision tokens are M15. Now, the next scenario is the robot is carrying something with it that it brought with it from home on the most recent launch. So, for example, the robot's got this health unit, it's gonna go put it somewhere, it drives out, is coming back, still has the health unit, doesn't make it completely into the home area. For the team to run another mission, they would have to interact with the robot, which is an interruption, which would cause them to lose a precision token. Because the health unit came with them on the most recent launch, they get to keep it, regardless of whether or not it is inside of the home area or outside of the home area. It's stuck. Okay, now let's take another object. Let's say that the team has retrieved a slide figure from outside of home, and they're coming back into home and they don't make it back in. If the team wants to be able to run another mission, they'd have to interrupt the robot, which would mean that they they lose a precision token. And since our slide figure is not back into the home area, it would get taken off the field by the referee if it was an in-person tournament. Just for the purpose of what you guys are doing with at-home videos, it wouldn't score, right? It gets removed from the field because it's not inside the home area. If the slide figure has crossed the home line, yep, I'm in, then the team gets to keep the slide figure, okay? So just to be clear as we're talking about this, if you have your rules and want to follow along, this is R15, which is interruptions. It defines the limits and actions of touching the robot after it's been launched. R16 is the interruption procedure. So it's the procedure and consequences for interrupting the robot, depending on where it was. And then we keep moving into R17, which is about cargo. So things that are under the robot's control, the robot's strategic control, So strategic just means like incidental control versus actually pushing it somewhere on purpose. R18 talks about interruption with cargo, which is what I just talked about. So if this is R18 actually just legitimately says for cargo completely or partially outside of home during an interruption. If the robot had it when it launched, like the help unit example I gave, the team gets to keep it. If not, since the cargo was not completely or since the cargo was completely or partially outside of home when the team interrupted it, the referee takes it. So that means that like if our cargo is half outside of the home area, it's not fully crossed into it, then it gets taken off the field. So as soon as it's completely inside of home, then it's okay for the cargo. You'd still lose a precision token if you touch the robot. Okay, are there any questions on interruption with cargo? This is there's a lot of words to describe this. In the rules, it spans a lot of rule text, and so it's kind of hard to work through it all. The easiest way to do it, and in all honesty, what I do, is I work through every situation of the robot's partially inside of home, completely outside of home, it's carrying something it brought with it, it's carrying something it picked up, and walk through it all to try to figure out exactly what happens to cargo and the robot in all of those situations. It's going to be a little bit different since you guys are at home recording videos. A referee's not going to be there to take away cargo or to give you back cargo. And so it's important that you guys know these things, because if the team touches the robot here, let's say when it's pushing this cargo and the cargo makes it all the way into home, then you need to know that you keep this, right? Whereas if we're going the opposite way, the robot is pushing things outside of home and the team realizes that they're misaligned and they pick up the robot, they need to know that they can bring this back with them, okay? Okay, are there any questions?
Nothing on the chat.
It's a lot of words. And don't be worried if it takes you a while to understand R15 through R19. I mean, just so you're clear, when we talk about the rules and when we hash through the rules as referees at the beginning of the season, it took us a good hour to work through all the different cases for this and make sure that we understood the back and forths and exactly what happened and how it happened. So don't be worried if it takes a while, and don't be worried if you guys have questions. That's why I'm here. I'm here to answer the questions. I try to reply to emails pretty fast. It's been very busy at work recently. So it'll give me like a day or two to turn around a question for you. But
Dee, how do those same rules work when it's equipment rather than a mission model?
so to Jim's point, it works the exact same way. So if the robot leaves home with equipment, since there's no distinction in the cargo rules whether or not cargo is a mission model or equipment, these function the same way. So right now we have equipment that's just counted as cargo. And so your robot goes out, team touches the robot, they get the robot back, they lose a precision token, but they also get this back because this is still in strategic control. So it's still cargo. So they get it back into home with them and they can relaunch. If the robot has left with it and is coming back with it, and if it's here when they touch the robot's partially inside of home, they lose a precision token. Cargo is not stranded. The referee takes this because it's not completely inside of home, right? So it's that second, if not the referee takes it, part of R18. And then this gets taken off the field by the referee. Did I say that case right? Did I say that happens like if the robot picks it up outside of home? No. Okay. So that's if the robot picks it up outside of home. So if the cargo's there from some other mission, the robot comes around and goes to bring it into home. Since this hasn't crossed completely into home, if the team touches the robot here, they lose the precision token, get the robot back. This gets taken off the field by the referee. If the robot has left with it, drags around, comes back with it, since the robot had it when it left home, then it sticks with the robot when the team brings it all back into home, although they do lose a precision token for touching the robot.
So the key is when they leave home.
The key is whether or not they've left home with it. If the robot had it when it launched for that mission run. So Sarah can read the questions too. Sarah, is there a question?
Yes, we now have a question about Mission 8. This coach is saying they don't have 2 tables at home. Of course, most I don't know any coaches who have 2 tables at home, but
Yeah.
ATAC says we can send a cube over the north wall.
Mhm.
Is it just one cube that we can send? And how will it be determined if the cube is in our target or not? Can you just clarify what can be done for mission 8?
Okay, yeah, so let's break that down because I think there were the starts of 4 different questions in there. So without a second table, first came out with a robot game update that says to earn the points for the shared botcha mission, that the team just has to send a cube over the wall, knowing that it doesn't go anywhere over the wall. So it clearly states a cube. So if you send 2 cubes, you do not get those 25 points. It has to be a single cube. Now I want to be clear that the cube has to be sent.
Dee, you stopped. Are you still talking?
I stopped mid-sentence on purpose because I wanted the exact words to be able to do it.
Okay, I was worried your video cut out.
Okay, so no, it says that if they've sent it via the share model. So as long as they've sent a cube over via the share model, right, Mr. K will demonstrate with a blue cube. Right, so that was sent via the share model. Can you just drop this on the slide and let it bounce down? Yeah, that's also sent via the share model, right? Then it will have counted for those 25 points, knowing that there's not anyone on the other side. That's perfectly fine. So the team just sends a cube. If they send both cubes, they don't get the points for it. Okay. So don't do that and expect a 25-point bonus. That won't get you anything. Okay, so breaking it down, the next part of that, since you don't have another team, they're not going to be landing a cube into your target area. You're not going to simulate that. Instead, as you look at the second and third bullet points of M08, it's just your cubes that are either in home or on the field that you want to score into the target area and the frames. So grab some cubes, make sure a yellow one. So as you come over here, right, this whole area is the frame. This little area is the target. The target is defined by the outside edges of the black line. The frame is defined by the outside edges of the axles and connectors. So, you know, the robot could drop a couple cubes. So now we have 5 cubes that are inside of our frame area and 1 cube that's outside. They get 5 points per cube, which means that they get 25 points. If they would have delivered this yellow cube into this area, then it would have given them 5 points for cubes completely inside of their area, and then 10 extra because there's 1 yellow cube completely inside of the target area. So in this case, they would have gotten 35 points. Does that make sense? I hope that answers the question. This one is a little funky just because there is no opposing team, but the opposing team really only impacts the first part of the bocce share.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, that was my question. I appreciate it. That clarifies it a lot. Thanks.
Just remember 1 cube. Don't send both because it won't count.
Okay.
On the bench, can we put as much as cubes if we want on the bench or not?
You can, but cubes only count 1 per space, and a robot game update clarified that spaces are defined by the cutouts in the bench, not by the actual hopscotch chalk squares on the field. So by that, what I mean is, and I was hoping that they weren't going to do this, but it's okay that they did. I was hoping that they would have said, this is a square, that's a square, 2 squares all the way down. But it's just 1 cube per frame, so isn't it 1 cube per frame? Jim, it's 1 cube per frame, right? Yeah, it's per space. So in this case, if the team, even though the team has loaded this up with a whole bunch of cubes and I have 6 cubes in here, this will only count per space. So in this case, it just counts 1 space, 2 space, 3 space, 4 space. So it would be 40 points.
Dee, what's the name of that mission? The one you're
M04 bench.
okay. The 1 per space on the bench for scoring.
Yep.
If they have more than one in
And
any,
then it's per space. So even if they put in like 3 cubes into a space, which they physically can't, even if they put in 2 cubes into a space, which you physically can, it only counts per space. It's not per cube. Okay, Sarah can read the question.
but if they have more than one cube in a space, it won't take away points, correct?
No, it doesn't take away points from the bench mission.
Okay. We have questions about boccia.
Yeah, sure.
Is the gap between the boccia frame and the wall considered in?
Yes.
Like that.
Yeah, right, but it's,
Should be pushed.
And if a cube,
That would be.
is that in? Like, I guess maybe people are wanting to know where is in.
so
I can't even get this.
I know, it'll just fall off. Well, okay, so the good way to do this is put it on the axle the other way. Right, so it says completely in, so so in this case, this cube wouldn't score. If this was on the other side, then it would score, because it's completely within the outside of the frame.
And then there's a question about the frame.
Is then so it's okay if it's in touching the wall or something like that. Just assume that the wall extends up to the mat edge.
So,
What was the question about the frame?
yeah, they're wondering if the frame is considered a virtual wall with some sort of height, or can the robot cross the frame?
So be careful. Be careful. Whomever asked that question, can you clarify if when the robot crosses the frame, is it left like that at the end of the match?
Oh, okay. So they're asking about an attachment over the frame. Is that a violation?
No. So the robot can
The body.
can deliver things into the frame however it wants. It's just at the end of the match, equipment cannot be inside of the frame. So that's inside of the volume going up, defined by the outside edges of the Legos. There cannot be any equipment in there. So if the robot, here, I'll use actually, just to be super clear, robot's dancing, part of the robot extends over the frame, right? Part of the claws over the frame, robot's dancing a little bit. Everything that's in here won't score at the end of the match because this area has to be free of equipment, and your robot counts as equipment at the end of the match.
Oh, interesting. All right.
Yeah. So if you're gonna dance and you're delivering stuff to the frame model, just be careful that you're not crossing into the airspace of the frame model.
Okay. Regarding boccia, would a yellow cube score +10 if it is touching the wall on your map?
Well, yes, but it has to be inside of the target area.
Yellow cube.
So that's okay. That gets your +10. That gets your +10 as well. So when I said it's not completely in, so this wouldn't get it because it's not completely inside of the target area, right? So imagine that the target area extends all the way up to the north wall, right? So to be very specific and super nitpicky, technically that's in, right? So if your team does something like this and it's just barely in, make sure to get a very good view of this in the robot game submission video so that the referees can be sure to appropriately score the mission.
Okay, mission 13. Can you confirm final score is based upon color at end of the match?
Yes.
My team wants scoring is based upon how they started the weight bar or how it ends.
So it is. It's at the end of the match. So if we come down here, mission 13 is the weight machine. And this allows a team to, at the end of the match, this is an exception. It allows the team to set the weight bar to wherever they want. And what it does, it changes the amount of force required to lift the weight, right? If it's on blue, it's the easiest to lift. Magenta is the second easiest, and then yellow is the hardest to lift if you're lifting from the green area. And we, as referees, it doesn't matter to us where this weight machine starts at the beginning of the match. It matters where it ends at the end of the match. So by that, I mean a team could set it to blue, lift it really easily and then push it in to yellow. It doesn't matter to us where it starts, it just matters where it ends at the 2.5 minutes. Or at the end of the match, when the team calls the end of the match.
Okay, so we've had 2 questions, or since the start of the call, more about when teams will know the parameters for making the recordings.
Yep. So I should hopefully have those out to you guys by Monday or Tuesday, just in time for the coach Q&A, like our standing Q&A on Wednesday evening. We're just testing it to make sure that it's feasible and make sure that we didn't miss anything or make it unduly difficult. I will admit it got long by accident. So as coaches, what I kind of expect is that you guys take the lead in making sure that the video meets the requirements that we're specifying. They're all really common sense requirements. Things like make sure to show us missions at the end of the match. Make sure that if it's a borderline scoring condition that you show it to us very clearly so we can make the right decision. Everything in there is to help you guys get the points that you guys have earned on the field. I don't expect the teams to do that all by themselves. I expect a parent, an adult, or a mentor to kind of make sure that they're hitting all the key points that they need to in the video, and for you guys to really remind them as they're doing those things, or whomever's the videographer, to make sure that those things are being done.
Dee, I'd also like to remind the referee or the coaches that they should practice the video as well, because there's specific requirements in it, and we don't want you trying to read those and do it the first time through. So
That's
practice
true.
shooting your video a few times before your first real run.
Before your first real attempt at running. And there's nothing in the video, we won't know if you guys get your perfect video, your perfect robot game submission with your perfect run the first time or the 17th try, right? We don't know that, and that's okay. This year is really allowing you guys to take luck out of the equation and letting you guys really showcase what the team has worked on and get the maximum points that you guys can get, that you guys have already programmed for those 2.5 minutes. And so Jim is very right. Make sure that the video and our requirements at the beginning and end of the video are not what's causing problems, right? And so just to give like a kind of teaser into the video, I mean, we need to see a team's inspection. So the team has to load in at the beginning and get all of their equipment into the inspection area and make sure that they fit into that space in advance of the match. And we need to be able to clearly see it. And then they need to set up the robots. And then they need to go out and run their mission. And then we need an overview of of every mission on the field to see that the team has done it successfully or whether or not they attempted it even. But we're not looking just for like the 5 or 6 missions that the team has done. We're looking to look at every mission on the table in order, with a couple of exceptions that we've outlined in the document. But I'll be fielding, I assume, a whole bunch of questions of that on Wednesday. But it was all designed by referees to help you guys get the points that you guys have earned throughout the season.
Someone is having a problem with mission 12. The row machine is pulling back.
Oh, I love that question. Okay, so as we look at the row machine gets a little iffy. And even this morning when I sat back at the table, it took me a couple tries to get it to work right. So if the row machine is pulling, it's probably a friction problem. So what I'm going to recommend you guys do, I'm not going to go get one, is that you guys use a Clorox wipe or a damp paper towel or something to wipe off the bottom of this tire and then clean up the mat in this area. Even my mat is a little dusty even. And so what that's going to do is make sure that your tire sticks when you pull it somewhere. If it's dusty, it's just going to slide right back in. So the mats are Clorox wipeable, but you can also just use a damp rag. You need something to be able to get all the dust off. You could use a lint roller. I really don't care much. Just make sure that the lint roller doesn't leave adhesive sticky behind. But you'll want to clean the mat. You want to clean the bottom of the tire to make sure that it doesn't slide. I do want to say though, if this keeps being a problem for your team, even though you've cleaned everything, I do want to mention that nowhere does it say in M12 that that tire has to be independent, right? So independent means it has to be free from touching equipment. It doesn't say that it has to be independent. So if you're worried about it slipping during your robot game video, maybe that's an alternate strategy.
So Glenn is offering a tip for coaches that the video for a robot game needs to be one continuous take with no editing. You must show setup, inspection, your 2.5-minute run, and also your scoring.
Yep, that is very true. There's no edits allowed in the robot game video. And that's very clearly because, right, within that 2.5 minutes, you can't start and stop the video or the timer, but also we're trying to simulate a real tournament. So loading into inspection, getting inspected, setting up, calibrating sensors, all of that should be done within the time that you would run at a field during a tournament. And then the robot would also have to be scored. And so our robot game submission video maximum is 7 minutes long, which is a lot more than the 2.5 minutes it takes to run the match, but it gets us through inspection, all that other stuff, setup, and then it gets us through the different scoring so we can look at all the different scoring, and then gives the referees, in theory, 3 minutes at a tournament to score a match.
So Dee, should teams be aiming for their video for a robot run to be under 8 minutes or something like that?
It's under 7 minutes, and it's all outlined in the robot game guidelines that we're testing this weekend for being able to make public to Illinois teams on Monday or Tuesday.
Sorry, I just wanted to understand that. So so you're saying you haven't published what needs to be in the video exactly, but you will be publishing that next week on Monday?
Yes, on Monday or Tuesday, it'll go out to teams. And it's not anything different than it would be for a normal tournament. It just has specific guidelines in there and kind of outlines really how the flow of the video should be to make sure that we get the information that we need to adequately score the team and give them the maximum points that they deserve.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have any more questions for any of the teams online? You can type your question or you can go ahead and ask.
Oh, my step counter works. Kind of.
True, saying that the inside gear needs to have like
Yay.
a of an inch between the outside beams. See that one?
Actually, I have a question, and it's related to the step counter. Sorry, was I talking over anyone else?
No, you're not. Go for it. I'm
Okay.
just trying to reset it.
Okay, no, because yeah, we're having an issue with that particular model. Like, it just isn't very smooth. Like, it doesn't. I just want to see if you could like kind of demonstrate the movement of the step counter. Ours just kind of gets stuck at different points when we're trying to move it forward. And I don't know if it's just something we didn't build properly or.
So I can tell you it is not built in properly because even mine is causing slight problems. Oh, that's a lot better. Okay, so what I just did, now I can't reset it, but what I just did was I squeezed the bottom together to make sure that everything was lined up properly. What you don't want is, I'm just gonna rip this off. This gear on the inside, this, that one, you need to have a little bit of space between that gear and this bar here, the outside piece.
Okay.
It shouldn't be rubbing up against it.
Okay, yeah, I see what you're saying, and yeah. Mhm.
It's also quite sensitive to whether or not the bar is being lifted up or pushed down as the robot tries to move that the step counter.
That is true. So mine's working pretty good being pushed down to a point.
I think it's basically.
I'm honestly not sure. This mission is finicky if you pick it up and put it back down, or if you're having to move your table with you to different places.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a way to reset it. You will notice that it's easier to do if you push up or pull down, so that could be a valid mission strategy. So someone asked me a really good question this week, and I'm going to talk about it really quick. It was kind of like about a moral dilemma, as there's easier ways to solve missions that wouldn't be how it's instinctively thought of at first. So like, for example, with this mission, like pulling up or pushing down, is the team allowed to do that? And as long as it doesn't say that's not allowed in the mission text or in that blue text, it's perfectly fine. So if the team finds that pulling up on this makes it run smoother, or pushing down on it makes it run smoother, that's acceptable. If they have a way to solve it that makes it easier for them and more reliable for them, that doesn't break the model or doesn't go against valid mission text, then it's okay.
Okay, thank you for showing that. And yeah, we're pretty much, ours is, it looks right what we have, but it just sometimes gets stuck, like when you're, you know, sliding it. So
Yeah.
I think we'll try that. Yeah, we'll try what you said, which is pushing up on it or pushing down on it and see if we have more consistent.
Pushing up or down, or even, you know, twisting it a little bit, like what I just did there, made it
Yeah.
a little bit easier. Alternately, you know, like, we don't care how you do it, as long as it says you can. So,
Okay.
Sorry, that's not super helpful, but I mean, in all honesty, you can take apart this mission 40 times and you're going to get a result different every time you put it back together. You can pick it up off the mat, put it back down, and it will be different when you put it back down. It's
Okay.
Someone is asking about this mission. Is it supposed to move smoothly, or is it supposed to move stopping?
So that's what we're talking about. If the model works perfectly, it will move really slowly on the push-in, as long as the team is pushing it slowly. So like, even this is not as smooth as it should be moving, right? This is still kind of jumpy. But there's not an easy way to fix that. There's not an easy way to fix it with the mission model. We haven't figured out a way that just like perfectly makes it work every single time.
I also have one other question, and it's for the treadmill.
Yes.
And we've seen like just some solutions that, you know, we've been brainstorming about how to do this one. And so it seems like there's a couple of ways you can do it, where you just have a motor and a wheel that just, you can like kind of put over the treadmill and then run it. And obviously that requires a motor to kind of complete that mission. Do you know if, because we want to try this, but we haven't quite gotten there yet, is like, can you just put your robot over the wheels and use the wheels of the robot?
So yeah, I don't know if this robot can physically climb the thing. So imagine that the robot can climb this. So the robot could definitely do this as a valid solution, and then just drive this motor to spin treadmill. That's definitely fine.
Okay.
They can also lower an attachment to run it with an extra motor or whatever, or even somehow magically have something coming off their main robot tire that does it. What I really want to highlight on this though is that whatever solution it is, the thing that moves treadmill needs to be part of the robot. And remember that robot is a dynamic definition. So I'm calling this my robot, but if I were to add on this attachment, this is now part of my robot, even though it didn't just start on there. It's because this is not designed to be detached except by hand. So I have to remove this, right? Which means that it's part of my robot. If I have different things that can snap into this attachment here, then it's part of the robot if it's supposed to only be removed by a technician. So what I really mean by that is, let's use our imaginations. If if this robot had like a gear rack mechanism on it and it could eject this whole attachment, this is not part of the robot because it can be ejected by the robot. It doesn't have to be removed just by hand. So you just need to make sure that whatever it is that's moving the treadmill is part of the robot, where that's defined as only being able to be removed by hand.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, Dee, we have a question about, what was it, the or not? Anyway, the team goes back and forth, and sometimes at the end, the dual lock separates.
Yes.
Would that cost a precision token? Or
So it depends. Robot goes back and forth.
It hits the mission back and forth, the mission becomes loose and basically
Oh,
boom.
so, okay. Jim and Jamie, contribute if you guys disagree with what I'm going to say here. So,
all right, step counter, not stair master.
I mean, either way, it could have been cool. Your robot is not allowed to break mission models. That includes removing the dual lock from the field. So if your team is doing, or if your robot is attempting the step counter by doing this, I'm not going to break my step counter, but you know, this is going to break the model. Any referee can see that this is going to disconnect the model or break the model. And so if this disconnects, and it's already disconnected, and then for the referees, can you get down here so we can see the disconnect? Right? We're disconnected here. Can you see that? I've lifted up off the mat. So I've broken the dual lock. This no longer scores. The step counter no longer scores. Okay? Because we know how much force it takes to disconnect something. I've now really broken my step counter.
Yeah. Any mission that's made easier by damaging the mission model doesn't score. And if you're going to hit it like that, then you're using that hitting to make it easier to score that mission, and it damages the mission model so it doesn't score.
Yep. Now, if your robot is hitting it like this, and we see that your dual lock comes up, then we know that there's something else wrong. Because there is a dual lock lot issue this year, this would be allowed, like this really gentle hitting, if it broke the dual lock, it would be okay. The referee would follow up with you and make sure that that was the case, as opposed to just giving you the points or not giving you the points. Right, and so just if you guys weren't aware, there was a dual lock issue that when it was die cut into the little 1 centimeter squares, all the tangs got compressed, and so they don't have the same interlock force. And so what that means is that things are easier to get taken up off the field, get broken off the field. Everyone should have received dual lock from FIRST or PITSCO to their address in their FIRST registration system, right? So if it goes to a school, then it went to the school or anything like that. And then I recommend that you guys replace the dual lock at a minimum of the mission models you guys are doing on the field and on the mission model itself. It's up to you guys to replace the other ones. I would recommend that you just replace all the dual lock on the field with the new dual lock that you guys have received. Everyone should have received that last month.
And also before they tape, they should go through and make sure everything's pushed down completely.
Yes.
Marked.
And that does not have to be on the video. That's a good point. Thank you, Jamie.
Right.
Just you should, before you start your robot game submission video, things should be set up properly. Things should be attached to the field right. Stuff like that.
Okay, Yazine is asking if there's a height requirement this year.
So yes and no. There's a height requirement in inspection. Everything must fit inside of the inspection zone, right? For the small inspection zone for that 25-point bonus at the beginning of the match, and that inspection zone is limited by 12 inches tall. While the robot is launching from the launch area to go out and run missions, there is no height limit. I lost my right stick. Where's my right stick? So, this would be acceptable even though we're 18 inches tall here.
Can you say that part again? I wasn't able to hear.
Yeah, no problem. So there is a height requirement during inspection. So M00, if you're following along, where you get inspected, there you go. Everything must to get the M00 bonus, everything must fit in within 12 inches tall inside of this small inspection area. If you're not doing the small inspection area, it's R13. Not R13. R9. So it's just fitting inside of the large area. And it still has to be less than 12 inches tall. When you go to launch the robot, when the team goes to launch the robot and set things up and queue things up, things can be as tall as they want. So, you know, this could be an attachment that's on your robot. Then it doesn't matter when you're here launching or when you're returning back into home. The height only matters when you're being inspected, and that's all the equipment must be inside of an inspection zone, either small or large, and less than 12 inches tall.
Someone's asking if they can use a side table for attachments.
Nope.
Or do they need to stay in base when not being used in a run? Jim answered that R9 and R12 state that all of your stuff must stay in home, no side table.
That is quite true. Not on the floor and not in technicians' hands, non-active technicians' hands. So by that I mean, to further Jim's point, if you're switching out the kids running the robot, they can't take stuff with them when they leave the table to allow someone else to step in. It all has to stay in the home area if the robot's not actively using it or leaving it somewhere.
The home area, definitely.
But they can
Home area is this. What was there?
They can spread it out after inspection.
Oh yeah, totally.
And they can stack it as tall as they want too, so.
They sure can. They sure can. So I don't have that much equipment that goes with this robot. But it can be a tower, it can be whatever.
So someone's asking about an extension that does not come off during the run can complete the treadmill.
If an extension doesn't come off during the run, if it's only designed to be detached by hand, then it's part of the robot and it can complete the treadmill. If the robot could self-eject the extension, it's not part of the robot and it can't do treadmill.
And for those that have been around for a while, that also means you can't use a strategic object. You can't just leave behind a strategic object to do the running of that mission.
So no running man robot, running mini bot.
Hold up. Hold up. No, don't go crazy here. If your mini bot is attached to your robot, then it can do it.
But if you separate from it, you can't.
If the robot can separate from it. But like, let's be clear, attached to the robot is a Lego hard attach or a string or a wire.
Shouldn't come off unless it basically unwinds itself, like the rope.
But then it's not part of the robot. If you use a string that can unwind itself from the robot and be released from it, it's not part of the robot. So, Sarah, a mini bot is fine because it has to be attached to the robot somehow.
For power, yeah.
For power.
Okay, so let's see here. During launch, can part of the robot be remaining in the home area?
Okay, one sec, let me be clear.
Launch is a home area. Home is
Right,
part of the
but you just said during launch, can part of the robot be remaining in the home area? No, because during launch, all of the robot and everything that it's going to move has to be included inside of the launch area. So you can't start your robot if it looks like this, because it's not all in the launch area. You can start your robot if it's got a jig that it's using off the west wall. You can start your robot, that's fine. Or you could even start your robot if it's like this and your jig is inside of the launch area and crossing the home line, but the robot's not about to move this.
As long as the jig doesn't move as part of the launch.
Yeah, as long as the jig doesn't move strategically as part of the launch. Yeah.
Can technicians hold things while the robot is on the field?
If they're active technicians, if they're the active technicians, and by active technicians, I mean the two students at the table running the robot or interacting with things in the home and launch area, they may be holding things, right? Yeah, they can be holding things. They can.
Yes.
Even
The
if it's
answer is
not
yes.
exhibition.
Do you recommend teams tape down the edge of the mat like we did at tournaments last year?
So I did. And I will say, if you're doing weight machine, I recommend you do it. It really depends how you're practicing. If you're practicing with your table, with your mat not taped down, then don't spring it on them and tape it down the day of the robot game submission video filming. If your table stays up the whole time, I totally recommend taping it down, because this mat is slippery enough that the robot could run into a corner and just churn up the mat, or it could get caught on something coming out of the home area or out of the launch area. But it's up to you. I mean, it's
Could I- Sorry to interrupt you. I just, I had a question related to that, and we tried taping ours down with like just regular Scotch tape, and it didn't really work very well. How do you recommend taping it down?
So I use this, it's gaffer's tape. This is, the tape is outlined in the field setup. Let me get back to it so I can read you guys some exact words. So step 4, optional, on page number 4 of the robot game rulebook. That's just so I could explain that, not that they have to. Step 4 is optional. To hold the mat in place, you can use thin strips of black tape covering only the mat's east and west black borders. So this is the west border. I use gaffer's tape. You could use electrical tape. I would just recommend black tape. The Scotch tape isn't going to be sticky enough to adhere to the wood. You can buy like 1 and 2 inch gaffer's tape from like Menards and a home improvement store and stuff like
I
that.
think that's half inch, isn't it?
So yeah, I was just gonna get to that. So last year for a lot of our tournaments, we bought 1/2 inch gaffer's tape online. And then we just use that so we don't have to cut it down or it's not absurdly large. But it's really up to you guys. Electrical tape works fine. That's how I grew up with robotics the whole time.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yep. So the west wall is a little bit harder to, or the east wall is a little bit harder to tape down. I got some of it on the wall here, and I didn't do a great job when I taped it down this morning. But you just want to make sure that you're not covering anything past the black border, right? So I think you can see a little bit of it. You can see where the edge of the gaffer's tape is. Yep.
Dee, can you point out on the west side of the mat how the gaffer's tape obscures the boundary line for the launch area?
Right. So what Jim is talking about here is that you can't really tell where my edge of the mat is, right? Which is why it's really important that if you do this, you kind of press it down in that area, just so we're clear. We can infer that if the team puts this down right so that the gaffer's tape doesn't extend over the black, right? Then we know that there's about
3/8.
like a centimeter, whatever, 3/8. Yeah, let's go with 3/8. Now I really want to know how long that is. A little bit, we'll be able to infer that this isn't home or not, right? So that we know that this isn't in home, right? We know this isn't in home. We know that's probably in home, right? And we know that's definitely in home. So there's a little bit of benefit of the doubt that plays into this, but it's not enough to have a negative impact on what you guys are doing. Just make sure that if you guys tape it, you guys tape in accordance with step 4 on page 4 of the field setup in the robot game rulebook.
Someone asked, is the inspection area time part of the 2.5 minute?
It's not part of the 2.5 minutes, but it's part of the maximum 7-minute robot game submission video.
And inspection occurs prior to the 2.5 minute robot run.
Yep.
In the video.
Yep.
After wouldn't serve much purpose.
It would not.
Jeremy is asking if teams can tape down all 4 sides.
No, you may only tape down the east and the west borders.
Another person's asking, does the rule about detachable parts as described for the treadmill apply to other missions as well?
So it only applies when the mission text, so the bullet points or the blue text, specifically state the robot, right? So many pages. Trying to
That's
find a
the
good
only one, I
example.
think.
That could be a good example.
So, right, so treadmill says if the robot, right, so it must be part of the robot where robot is defined by R03. a good example of one that doesn't have to be the robot is the step counter. So this one just says if the bottom of the pointer is on magenta, yellow, or blue, right? And so this doesn't specifically say that it has to be the robot. So it doesn't have to be permanently attached to the robot or even part of the robot. It's hard. I'm trying to make it big enough that I'm not using very explicit
Right.
words to describe a strategy.
Yep. Well, you know, the same thing that you said over there with the gear thing, right? In terms
Right.
of extension.
Right.
So,
Yeah. So in this case, you know, oh, how weird can I make this? I think that's the question of the day. Sure. Right. So let's all agree none of this is part of the robot. Right. This is all just cargo if my robot's strategically moving it. Right. This is acceptable. My model doesn't work well, but it would be. I'm very thankful teams will not be running on my step counter mission.
Can the team bring the cell phone to home, flip by hand, and push back to the mat anywhere? Will they get points?
Yes. Yep. So the cell phone just says that you get points if it's white set up and it's resting only on the mat somewhere. Yep. Not only on the mat, right? It's resting on the tire. Not only on the mat, it's resting on the floor. Push-up bar, pull-up bar. Only on the mat, white side up. Not only on the mat, because home is not mat. That part of home is not the mat. Right?
Can you explain the cargo rule with the cell phone? Like, would the robot have to bring it entirely back inside of launch or home to?
Yeah. So let's say the robot did go to pick up the cell phone and it was bringing it back with it. Let's just put it up here to make it fun. The robot, to not lose a precision token, the robot has to make it completely into home, right? If the robot doesn't make it completely into home and the cell phone is completely in home, then the team keeps the cell phone. If the cell phone is not completely in home, then this would get taken off the field by the referee, or this just wouldn't score. And if the cell phone's totally not at home, it still gets taken off the field and would not score.
So it's partially in, it gets taken and doesn't score.
It has to be completely inside of home for the team to keep possession of it. Oh. So Mr. K wants me to point out that wires count as part of the robot. And so in this case, the robot is not completely inside of home. So there, now it's a little bit more clear. Gyro sensor is completely in home, the wire's not. So if the team interacted with the robot at this point, they would lose a precision token because part of the robot is extending outside of home.
But they would get to keep the cell phone.
They would keep the cell phone.
Okay. So are you allowed to use Lego rubber bands to control your cords?
Yes. Yeah. So you guys can control your cords however you want.
Just can't use office rubber bands.
Just not office rubber bands. So I want to, just while we're talking about this, there are ways to control the wiring within your robot, right? So in this case, this is one of my demo robots, or I use it to troubleshoot things like sensors, like gyro sensors. All my wires are very controlled in here. All my motor wires, I have 3 of them, right? I have my attachment motor that runs down through my robot back up to my ports. And then I'll just take off the gyro sensor so it's a little bit more visible. My drive motor wires feed up through the bottom of my robot and then come around and plug into the front of my ports. My gyro sensor I just threw on here yesterday to troubleshoot some stuff, some funky stuff. And this wire is not well controlled. If I were to actually be attempting to use this robot somewhere to do something, it would not look like this. It would be pulled down, probably fed under and through, and then come back to my gyro sensor, right? So you just want to, what I'm trying to put out there is wires aren't handles and they can cause you to lose precision tokens. So a well-controlled wiring on your robot, I think, is really important. It doesn't take long to do, but it's very important that it gets done at some point.
Lego string is also a good thing to use in addition to rubber bands.
Yep, Lego string is another good one.
So someone's asking if you can use zip ties on your wires.
Nope, not Lego. I wish, that would be so much easier. No, but it's got to be a Lego product. You can also do some cool stuff with a number 2 axles and like these things, these pieces to kind of like make corrals and little boxes almost to hold wires. I've seen some cool stuff over the years with that.
The Spike Prime kit came with some special.
The Spike Prime came with the most beautiful wire clips that have Lego connectors on them. So it's really easy to control the Spike Prime wires. They do not fit over the standard, over these wires.
So we have a comment, another coach is adding that it's important to note wires could be over the wall edge or over the limit line.
Right.
Cause issues when you're launching or returning to home.
Definitely true, right? So what you can't see, and it's not even just wires, what you can't see is that I have an inappropriately long beam holding my medium motor in place. And when this gets lined up against the wall, this is not in launch. So this team would not be able to launch with this piece here. They'd have to offset to be able to launch. So this has to be inside, right? Inside of the area.
But it can drive over and is instantly after it goes out.
Right, it could do that and then wall follow down if they wanted to. That would be fine. It's just that when the team initializes the robot somehow with either, sorry, that was a cat. As the team initializes the robot, everything it's going to move must be inside of the launch area. That includes wires, that includes Legos, everything else that it's going to take with it. So like, for example, something that can get redelivered. The tire could get redelivered. I don't know why, but you know, the team cannot launch like this. Now my robot's inside of launch, but this tire is not, because the robot is going to move this, right? So this has to be completely inside of the launch area. I guess bench is a slightly more appropriate.
Someone's asking if small pieces of masking tape can be used to mark cable.
Nope. No, to mark the cable? No.
Isn't the only thing acceptable Sharpie, like on the brick or something?
Yeah, in like hidden areas.
Because
yeah, so at that point, I assume you're kind of talking about like wire management and like knowing to where to plug things back in. The easiest, always acceptable way to do it is to use the different Lego rubber bands and color code them. There's white, blue, red, and yellow. And so you could use those and just color code your wires. So if you had to switch out the brick or something like that, you could really easily know what goes where.
You could use the thread and the colored bushings as well.
Yep.
You can find the rubber bands.
Yep.
Okay, someone's asking, can the entire video be filmed by cell phone, or do we need a webcam or tripod set up for full field?
No, so actually cell phone is perfect. That is, and it can be just handheld. It doesn't, you don't have to mount on a tripod. That is good enough. The microphone on there is good enough. It's really, we made sure that the guidelines that we adopted from FIRST and the ones that we put in there to make it sure that we could give you guys the right score, really just, it's driven around the idea of just using a cell phone.
And practice with that. Don't go crazy in terms of the movement either.
Well, yeah, so I mean, all of that's outlined. It's like we want a stationary view while the robot is doing its 2.5-minute match and stuff like that. It's all outlined in the guidelines, which you guys will be able to read this week.
Make sure it's in landscape mode also.
Yes, that's a great point.
Dee, I'm going to pause for a second here. I'm going to stop this recording. I'm going to start a new one.
Okay.
Nobody's going to go anywhere. Just everybody hold on. Don't talk for a second while I do this.